to the UBC Youth Circle, our first session for the 2012-2013 school year. My name is Crystal Morris. I'm the Aboriginal Education Coordinator for School of Population and Public Health. My interior Salish name is Malistia. That's from the Shuswap Nation, Splatsin community. My co-Salish name is Be'ehia from Vancouver Island. My father belongs to Sartlip Indian band. I am the host for the UBC Youth Circle, and today I would actually like to welcome Bambi Tate and Jessica St. Jane. But first of all, I'm actually going to do a little bit of housekeeping before I turn it over for them to introduce themselves, and also recognize the traditional territory that we're hosting this presentation today, which is the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh communities. So definitely want to be respectful of their nations and where we're residing today doing our presentation. If we could just do a little bit of housekeeping. Now that the session is being recorded for educational purposes, and if you're not okay with that, then unfortunately we're going to have to ask you to not participate, because part of this is expanding it into the communities who are not able to currently participate at today's session, and we're becoming that tool for communities when they need resources on these specific topics. So my apologies for that. And if you are on video conference, if you could mute your speakers if you haven't done so already, and we will address any questions if you could just get my attention or the facilitator's attention if you have a question. And if you are having difficulty with your video conference, please call our technical support line at 1-877-666-3211, and somebody will readily assist you to get connected again. And for the Adobe Connect, this is our first session for the Adobe Connect for people participating on their computers from home or at their desks or in their schools. And if you ensure your speakers are turned on your computers, and that your volume is up, and that there are no audio devices plugged into the speakers, such as the headphones. Sometimes the headphones will prevent people from hearing us on their computer systems. And just a reminder, we're not able to hear or see you, but you can participate by typing in the chat window at the bottom of the screen. It is being monitored by a live moderator. And so for now, I will actually turn the floor over to our facilitators for today's session on sex, sexuality, and introduction. And here's Jessica St. Jane and Bambi Tate. Please welcome them to our UBC Learning Circle.
Yay! Awesome. Loud? Okay. Yeah, usually it's not too bad. Oh, but loud for somewhere over there? Or okay, cool. So hello everyone. We're happy to be, I'm happy to be back another year doing these learning circles. This is my friend that's helping us out today. I think maybe she can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Bambi. I am, I've been sort of like an auntie to the Aboriginal Youth Program for a few years now, and I'm really excited to sort of do a little more hands-on work today. So my traditional introduction, my name is, Flamom Saman Onwai, Wilps Loose Wilsa Witwi, Anspayak Wilsa Witwi, Gitsan Kwai, or like Nisam. No. Yeah, I think that's right. I'm sure that some Gitsans are listening, and they'll make sure to email in and correct me. But my name is Hlamom Saman On, which is Gitsan for helpful hands. I come from the House of Luce. I was raised in the village of Kispiak, also known as Anspayak, and have been living and loving on Coast Salish territory for the last 10 years. I am also the our prevention education program coordinator at AIDS Vancouver.
Thanks, Bambi. That's awesome. I'm Jessica St. Jean. I'm from the Squamish Nation. I'm just learning how to, just beginning to learn how to speak Squamish, so I think it's Jessica Quiensna. My name is Jessica. I was super excited to learn that little tiny thing, and I'll keep learning probably for the rest of my life. So I'm from the Aboriginal Youth Program at YouthCO HIV and Hepatitis C Society. We do our work in Vancouver. So YouthCO is an HIV organization, like I said before, and our mandate is we exist to lessen the impact of HIV on the youth of British Columbia. We do that in a few different ways. So we have a support program. So we do different groups for people who are either have HIV or are affected by HIV. Most of us are affected by HIV. We all know that. We usually have family members or loved ones or friends who are living with HIV. And we have so we have support programs, we have drop-in, we have food, we have movie nights. We just try to really create a really youthy community around this issue, this health condition. And so I don't do any of that. I'm actually part of the education program. So on the flip side, we have an education program. We go to youth groups and schools and people's living rooms, people's rec centers sometimes, different nations' rec centers. And we talk about HIV and sexual health and all sorts of cool stuff in between. So my program itself is called the Aboriginal Youth Program. So we do culturally kind of safe and relevant HIV workshops and sexual health workshops for and by Aboriginal youth. And as Aboriginal youth, being an Aboriginal youth myself, we all know that it's important to have safe spaces to talk about these things for a number of reasons. So yeah, that's what I do. We also have a volunteer program, so if anyone's in Vancouver or wanting to stop by and just say hi, our office is on Seymour Street, so it's right in downtown if anyone wants to come say hi or help out. We do all sorts of stuff. We also have we also have a Facebook page. It's called Aboriginal Youth Program. Pretty simple. That's who we are. Yes, and if anyone, the point, maybe I will, so today we'll be talking a little bit about sexuality. I will be reading from my notes, so that's why I'm looking down a little bit. So we'll just be talking about sexuality, what sexuality is and what that can include, and things we talk about in our workshops, like gender and sexual orientation and wellness and all that stuff. And I thought it'd be a good idea as an introduction to this year because, what we do is really about you guys and what you want. And so I'll do a little bit of an introduction, talk briefly about some of the things we can talk about this year, and then feel free to email the Learning Circle or email us with ideas or questions, any support you need. So sexuality can include a lot of topics, and sexuality is important to our overall health and well-being. And so my goal in this workshop is to share a little bit of information, to open up some discussion on how we can be aware of these things and how we ourselves can create safe and inclusive environments, that's us as facilitators, and then you as other people out in the world as well can create safe spaces for everyone so we can all feel supported by each other in these topics and these areas of our life. So I'm hoping that, this introduction sparks a little bit of questions or curiosity in everyone and you'll be inclined to email in and ask us some stuff and give us some ideas of what we want to talk about in the future. And then I was talking to a youth, truthfully, the other day about how we did these workshops, and she asked if we would talk about bullying, because I think bullying is something that's really on people's radars in the last few weeks, and I think the way that we can contribute to that in this discussion around bullying is the ways that we can be aware of different aspects of like sexuality and difference, even like, you know, we're the same, we're different in a lot of ways, and that's awesome. But being aware of these things and then making these safe and inclusive environments can help to combat things like bullying and help people feel included and safe. I can't see if we have any participants. Do we have any youth participants? Any actual youth participants?
Do, yes.
Yeah?
We've got Jen Chorney from Mentini.
Okay.
And we've got First Nation Tech Council, so I'm just trying to find out what.
And there is also on, I think there is a youth with one of their counselors on.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask everyone a question out there, and we only have a few participants. So I think it'd be really great if everyone kind of like puts himself out there a little bit and participates. So my question to you is, how do we create safety for others? Like me as a person, how can I create a safe environment for everyone else to live in and feel accepted? So how do you do this? And also, have you noticed other people doing this? So what do you notice other people doing to create safe environments for you? And that's my question. So I'll just wait a few seconds for people to kind of get some answers in and participate, because I know some people it takes a little bit longer.
So can I just suggest something? Maybe can you repeat the question, because we were working on sound, and Stephen has just resolved hopefully some of those issues, because it was a little bit fuzzy and they heard the background. Oh, okay.
Oh, what is the response? Does someone want to read that out?
Do you want to
Or
do the question and then do the response so that people who are still listening can...
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so what kind of things can we do to create safety for others, to create safe environments where people can live free lives and feel happy and accepted? And also, what kinds of things do you notice other people doing to create safe environments for us? So that was my question to start off with.
Okay. Are you talking about Susan Armstrong? Okay, so we have some participants in the north from Carrier-Sacani.
Oh.
And she would like to post messages and pictures that reflect diversity, and just have it in our space, not necessarily draw attention to it. And and she's making a comment here, and she said, I confront homophobic comments. An 11-year-old boy today said homosexuality is gross, and we talked about it. When I told her I had gay friends, she said that was cool. So just bringing awareness to it and bringing it to our space. And if you probably had any experiences with that type, and what other resources can Susan use in?
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Did everyone hear?
Jesse,
Yeah.
try to repeat that again, sorry.
Repeat the question again?
Okay. Yeah, this is a great first learning circle, because we're just talking about very general things, so we'll kind of get through a few of our technical difficulties, and hopefully next time it'll go a little bit smoother. So my question to everyone is how can we create safe environments for other people? And we had one response from the computer here saying that one of the ways that they create safe spaces is addressing things like homophobia and talking to people about it. I think
and putting up posters that promote diversity.
Yeah, posters that promote diversity. So like posters that promote diversity, like we live in a new age where a lot of youth are like on Facebook all the time. We're very addicted, and like social media is a place that we can post like videos and like posters and stuff like that and ideas around diversity. So that's a really good outlet to use as well for young people. Did we get any
Something specifically around homophobia would be Out in Schools and Community, which are 2 online resources that anyone can access. And although they're based here in Vancouver, they can actually send resources out to your school or to your program anywhere within British Columbia. And they usually have some really, really cool video contests that happen just before the Queer Film Festival. And so I watched quite a few films this year, and they had some really cool pieces around youth creating videos to address like people using the word fag or gay as a negative or a slur or like and so it was really cool just to watch, and it was all really relevant for youth because it's made by youth.
Yeah, that's the Queer Film Fest, and like all the short films that they make are such a good resource. So Bambi mentioned 2 things there, 2 resources, websites which were Out in Schools and also Community. So I wrote those down here, and I'll make sure to put those up on our Facebook page, and I'll probably send them to Crystal as well so she can put that up as a resource on her Facebook page. So we're going to start off this workshop with one of our videos that we made this year, and what a coincidence. This is a short film made by youth, and it addresses things like homophobia and racism. So we're going to show that, and so everyone enjoy, and we'll talk a little bit about it after.
strong houses and your teepees, but how we think strong, think winner. We support each other in that. Don't say we're going to be better than others. We're just always reminding ourselves we're going to do our best. That's what you're going to do.
So I think we need to wait. I think some people have just joined us, and so we're going to wait a minute for them to catch up. Was that what's happening?
They're actually still watching the YouTube presentation.
Oh, okay. So they're still watching YouTube, so we should wait for them.
Do you need a PowerPoint?
No.
Oh. Does that mean you did?
I sounded offended.
I know. I was just going to say. So I thought you were joking.
Why would she have no sound if it's a leak?
Maybe they didn't unmute their machine. Because you asked everyone to mute them before we started.
Oh, and no, but the computers, they should, because they should be able to play the link off their computers, and then there should have been the sound. Because their microphones were not muted on their computers, right? It was only on.
One person at a time. Problem with sound? Okay. Am I allowed to start?
Sure. Yeah, she's there.
So we just watched a video that was made with our first direction workshop. I thought it was pretty witty for making up that name. That happened in the spring of 2012. It's true. I did think I was witty.
It's pretty great.
So that was, we brought 24 youth from 13 communities across British Columbia to make, we had 3 videos in total, so probably during the next year we'll show a few more of them. So I'm going to ask another question to the audience. So what stood out for us in this video? And was there anything that resonated with you or anything that you liked about the video? Sorry, I'm used to talking at that thing. Bambi, was there anything that stood out for you? Or that you liked about it?
Want to put me on the spot or anything? I just really, like, I watched all the videos, and I like that all of them, like, the messages, especially when Gary's talking about how like teaching that love and that respect starts in the womb, and for me, like, the way I've started to, and the way I've always sort of thought about sexuality is that's also where sexuality starts, is in the womb, because we think about sexuality, and it's really good that we're going to talk about this, like, in broader terms, but we think of sexuality and we automatically think of sexual orientation, and the two are really different. And we also automatically think of sexualization, which is very different than sexuality, because sexuality is your gender is like an integral part of who we are as beings, and I think that that I like that idea that it starts when in the womb. Yeah.
Yeah, I find a lot of the time, like just being a sexual health educator and having Aboriginal youth more affected by HIV, we're always told really to like go in and talk about HIV and how HIV, how we can prevent it and stuff. But I love the message that really like talking, like trying to, it's kind of like putting a band-aid over it and how it doesn't actually heal it is like really like teaching people respect, like how Jerry was talking about right from the womb, and like when having respect and and how that builds self-esteem, and like how we're more like when we have self-esteem and respect for ourselves, we're more likely to be respectful to other people. How it's just like it seems so simple, but it's so complicated, right? And I love that when we do our workshops, we can talk about these things and do these things together instead of just talking about HIV, and because it's so much more than that.
Yeah. And I think that like, and you hit, like for me, you hit it right on the spot when you said that HIV is like we're more affected by HIV than the general population. And also that it's that it is a band-aid to go in and get tested, or to like throw some condoms at someone and be like, here, use these, without giving any of the talks that could come along with that, and that would make using condoms a lot, like give it a lot more meaning than just kind of like don't get yourself knocked up, or don't get a disease, where it could be like, here, like use this so you can take care of yourself and so that you can take care of your partner. I think is hopefully the switch that we'll be making as Indigenous communities, because HIV to me is a symptom of a larger problem, and to me it's an effect of colonization and of what we've sort of experienced over the last, especially here in BC, over the last 100 years. So and that disconnect that we have from our bodies is so huge, and it takes so much even for myself to stay present in my body, especially in intimate moments, even if they're just intimacy within friendships where you're sitting this close. It took me a long time to like get used to that, and maybe that's not a common problem, or maybe it is, so yeah.
No, I think it's super common. Like,
Okay, so we have a comment from Susan, and she said what resonated for her with regards to that video is it's a message of coming home in terms of a way of being with yourself and your identity.
Yeah, like I think like the identity thing really resonates with me. I think this like, and that's the important thing about, like you were saying, identity and
a way of being with yourself.
A way of being with yourself is like, that's why I think that that's why having Aboriginal sexual health educators is so important, because like then we can have open conversations about what it means to be us, and we all know that that's very different from a lot of other people. Like we all have, even though we come from all sorts of different cultures across Turtle Island, we have a lot of things in common as well, right? And the colonized idea of education is like, oh, what's happening with these people over there? Go tell them what to do, and that's just not how we roll, and we need to be able to express ourselves and talk to each other safely about these things. Yeah.
Can I actually pose a question before Susan has to run?
Of course.
She states that she's been trying to find first-person narratives of two-spirited people that are written for youth. She's only found 2, and the language was fairly adult-oriented. Do you know of some first-person narratives from a youth perspective?
Like two-spirit narratives?
As in,
yes.
like,
yes.
What two-spirited is, or two-spirit, okay.
My suggestion is, like, if we can't find it, we just make it. Like, I'm a two-spirited person. I'd be happy to work on that project with someone. And there's a lot of two-spirited people in our community across BC.
what it has meant to them to be two-spirited.
What it has meant to them. That's interesting because I was reading a writing on two-spiritedness like yesterday and the day before, and how when colonizers came and they saw that like people with different gender expressions and women had power in our communities, that was like really scary to them, and it was really wrong to them as well, right? In the culture where heterosexuality was the norm and it was their only option, and also males. It's a patriarchal society where males have more power than everyone else. And that was a big threat to their culture and what they wanted to tell us our culture should be. So two-spirited people were unfortunately, like in some cases, like really, like the culture of two-spirited people like essentially did disappear because of like colonization efforts, and we don't exactly know. We don't have a lot of teachings about like what that meant to people and like their way of life and how they live their lives. But we do know that like two-spirited could either be like a gender expression, like you're born to a female body of all the female parts, but you don't necessarily want to express yourself in what would be the feminine way. And our feminine way is very different from Western feminine way, just to note. And so it could be like a gender expression. Sometimes these days, a lot of the time we refer to it as a sexual orientation, like something that's not completely straight, whether that's bisexual or just gay. Yeah, and Bambi, I think I'm talking a lot. What would you want to say about that?
Okay, so she adds something further before she leaves. She said, yes, I have found some good descriptions of history of two-spirited people and the impact of colonizers, but very little on the lived experience narratives.
Yeah.
I just want to say two things. One is that when we fall into anything, and especially when we're looking for written things, is that we fall into this area, the gray area, around sort of creating and are just really being aware of pan-Aboriginalism. So not like taking one, this is like the way, this is what I read about two-spirited, so that applies to every like Indigenous community in Canada or in North America. Really being aware of that especially here on the West Coast, that we're very diverse, we're very diverse on the West Coast, and so just being aware of that. And two, that anything, like there's not a lot of stuff that's written, partly because of the huge influence of religion as a part of the colonization process. And so because like two-spiritedness or stepping outside of gender binaries isn't written in the Bible, that's not going to be something that was allowed. And so a lot of our cultures have actually ended up colonized. And so when you look at these traditions that are, that we see as traditional, really when you look at it, some of them can be really like I see some of them and I don't see how they're really honoring matrilinealism, because I come from a lineal community and nation, and sometimes those two things don't match up because it's become like tradition, but really that tradition is not honoring all folks, and it's very colonized. But the other thing is that there's a two-spirit organization that's run out of Toronto that has some really great pieces, and they actually created a handbook a couple of years ago on, and that's set up for two-spirited folks. I don't think that it's youth-orientated, but it's a great book to have. And I think it's set up for not only two-spirited people, but also folks who work with two-spirited people, just to sort of bring some awareness around things that you should, how you can respect someone, I think. But you can look at, I think you can just Google like Two-Spirit Toronto and you might be able to find it, or it might be off of CAN's website, the Canadian Aboriginal AIDS Network. Yeah.
There's also one in New York. Remember that guy who was at Salmon and Bannock that time we were hanging out there?
Yeah. The guy that I had met, and in my head I was trying to figure out if I knew him.
Yeah. So that's also something that we can post on our Facebook page, and the Learning Circle can post on wherever they feel like it, as well as a resource. Did you find that helpful, Susan?
She makes a comment. She said, those are great points. I'm looking for current, modern, lived experience narratives that is meant for youth, because she's dealing with a high number of youth that are two-spirited.
You know what I do? Like with a lot of stuff that I find current is like in my work, I'm developing some stuff around consent, and if I look up at the actual books and libraries that they have around consent, it all has to do with like protecting yourself from sexual assault or what sexual assault is. But really, what I want to know is other stuff. So I look at lots of blogs. I just enter in what I want to hear, what I want to know on Tumblr, and some really great things come up on there, and that's what I would suggest. Tumblr is amazing though.
Yeah,
There's some
it's
really
addictive.
great stuff on there around consent, and I had to justify at work like why I was on there.
What's Tumblr?
What's Tumblr?
It's a blog. It's called TUMBLR.
And it's like it's just a place where you can sort of start your own blog page, but you can actually just sort of reblog or repost things that other people have posted, or you can just go there to sort of cruise and look for like some really great resources. And so if they did have anything on there around being two-spirited, it would be actually written by folks who are two-spirited, and it's nothing's crazy academic, and it's real lived experiences, exactly what you're looking for.
Like by them, not about them.
Yeah, totally. And it's not going to be all crazy tradish. It's just going to be for real.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just for real. That's
For
how
real.
we do.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Okay, so she has to leave now.
Cool. Are we having any participation from anyone else who could be watching? Or, okay. Usually we can see them around the screen. Is there anyone participating?
It's actually
like
limited.
us and us.
It is actually limited participation today.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
know why. I don't know if it's the time, but that's what we spoke of as well.
Okay, that's cool. I just wanted to check. I think you're pretty fascinating anyways, Bambi.
You too, Jessica.
Thank you.
You can have a little Pisces moment every once in a while.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention earlier today that if we have enough time, we'll be doing a condom demonstration. You'll be seeing a lot of condom demonstrations this year. I'm sure you can imagine why. Condoms are pretty important. And we want to reinforce that, sexuality can be an awesome and great thing, and there's also ways we can stay safe while we're doing that. Let's put that off to this. Oh, it's still in the camera. Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I wasn't hiding anything.
And when I do condom demonstrations, I also like to put little pointers, like sort of about how to be respectful when you use them, and like how to really in the end, like all of them are like how to get yourself invited back to use them again. So throwing in a few little sexual manners, like I don't know if those are just how to be polite.
Yeah, so like Bambi, I've heard you talking a little bit about one thing you might want to talk about in the future is like manners, like during dating and stuff like that. Like how to be good to other people is pretty important.
Yeah, I think it's becoming a lost art, dating, and like I grew up on a reserve and nobody went on dates ever. You just hooked up and you hung out and that was what happened. And then when you broke up, a lot of the time it was like a complete tragedy because you had to see them every single day at school or like at every single event that you went to. But here in the city, it's like in the urban centers, I think it's a lost art. Or maybe it's an art that I never even knew. And TV totally throws it all off because dates don't normally go like that.
Yeah, I think
they're just as awesome, but like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the heteronormative that they normally are on TV.
I prefer myself like a good hangout.
Yeah. I get really nervous when I say date, when I actually use the term date, like let's go on a date.
Mm-hmm.
But then I go on dates with my friends all the time and it's fine. But if I'm like, when I'm going on a date, it's the same thing as hanging out, but I'm like,
Yeah, for sure.
Suddenly a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to actually step in right here
Uh-huh.
because I'm not sure what happened. We had more participants coming online, supposed to have been coming online, so we're not sure what has happened to some of the people that were supposed to be online, which were some of youth and some of the frontline workers. So I see that our participation now is really limited, and knowing that the experience is sitting in the room who's had the experience and the historical background of an experience of the youth circle and the learning circle. So maybe we can just maybe switch gears and talk about maybe some future sessions and ideas. Sorry, I don't know how to say your name. Genevieve?
Genevieve.
Genevieve. If
Hi,
you're still in
Genevieve.
the room, are you still in the room?
I think she said she'd leave within half an hour.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she's still signed in, but Steve is here and us in this room are here. Susan had to leave and she had a youth with her.
Is that everyone that was signed in?
Well, there should have been more. We had
Yeah,
like 8.
but in
Yes,
actuality,
in
it's just
actuality,
staff?
there was, and Susan up in the north. But I mean,
Like Abine? Ooh.
Ooh.
I know
okay,
peeps
so
that
if
like
we
that.
can, until they join, maybe if we can just facilitate a discussion around the timing. I'm gonna use your little thing here.
Yeah, I actually thought that one in the afternoon
See, they're
would
really
be
useful
catching
for all
you.
sorts of things. Yeah, I think
So-
usually we do them around. We might do them around 3, like right when they get out of school. Might be a better time to do it. Yeah, and then I think it'd be pretty cool to do it'd be good to do this intro one when we have more youth participants or whatever. Yeah.
We're actually, and Steve, what we were looking at doing is, of course, we realized the timing probably was an issue because that maybe perhaps enough notice was not given for people to sign up.
Also, they're in school right now, so if they were allowed to go out of school, which sometimes totally happens, they could be in the learning circle. But if they weren't allowed to go out of school, to wherever they're doing it,
that they stay in school.
yeah.
Right. But of course, some of the districts are saying that they need to have this information and wanting to give them classroom credit, just like they're doing up in the Hazelton area. She pulls all her students, right?
Yeah, we have participants that we've worked with that always come from Hazelton Secondary.
Oh, okay, and that's good to know because we've expanded into the school
And they're
districts.
Gitsan.
I know.
And one of the new initiatives that we were talking about, and Steve is working on the technical piece, is to see if we can actually get out and host a learning circle from Richmond School District in an auditorium where there are
Won't be
100
live.
students brought into
Would they be
the
Aboriginal
auditorium.
students or
Yes,
just general?
No, they would be Aboriginal students, and then broadcast that out to the communities.
Whose
So-
territory is that? Tsleil-Waututh? Is that
No.
No?
Richmond. Burrard?
Yeah.
Burrard? Yes.
Yeah.
So, looking
You can
at
go and find the youngest chief ever voted in. Come and do a welcome for us.
Oh,
I know.
that'd be special.
I'm such a genius.
So looking at that over the next couple of months, and talking about participation. Now, the June session was held from 1 to 3.
Was that during school though?
June 12th. So it would have been.
Probably still
Was I?
That's still school for high schools.
Yeah.
Too.
I have 2 suggestions just from
Okay.
sitting here. One is the next time if these lights come in different, if you can turn 2 of them off maybe, then see how it's got a bit of a different, just the screen, or we look a little bit darker. Yeah, because of the fluorescent lights. Yeah, if we could change that, that would make a bit of a difference just to be able to actually see us. Yeah.
What kind of medicine is in here?
Sage and tobacco. And I believe that sage comes out from one or the other.
Yeah. Is that a dimmer switch?
Okay, no.
Or is that
No,
for
I tried
temperature?
that one.
Okay.
That one was for that thing up there, I
okay.
think. They used to have a screen
it's
in
for
here.
hands for the air
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a bit loud.
Okay.
So complicated.
Okay. And then the other thing was, I don't know how you're gonna have it in the past, but if you had something here, where we can see the live feeds too, because it's always helpful for me to be able to read questions as they're coming in. rather than like hearing them, because then it helps me just personally to process the information and think about it.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
I hear people.
Like Babine.
Listen, are doing hello. Hello.
Hi.
That speaker, you can put it over here and take it off mute.
Probably support workers with the connection.
With their try it.
Oh yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, obviously we can't hear them.
We can't hear you.
We can hear you though. Yeah.
Okay.
Mute.
No.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear
Hello.
us
Nope.
now? No.
Hello.
I can hear you now.
Hi. No. Practice sign language. The two-handed.
She's covering her mouth.
Seriously, she's like the two-hander. She knows.
That was great sign language. Oh, they have a nice office.
I know.
in there.
Is this like Babine is in Burns Lake?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. They just built their health station a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool.
It's really pretty.
Because they want to see and expand it out to the youth and to youth workers.
Awesome.
Like so, Carrie Sakani was one that
Yeah.
I just actually was in contact with via Susan, who will ensure all of our youth and all our learning circle does get out to the community.
Well, I know
Now they're muted.
a son of a hereditary chief named Wilf Plasway from Lake City. And he has his own youth group. They do like traditional drumming and singing, and I should get on him to like make them come to this.
And be a part of the group and then
Yeah.
come to the learning circle. 'Cause that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I know Burns.
What's their res that's right by Touch It?
Oh, but he can't do
Touch It?
anything.
Touch It? Touch It?
Yeah.
We call them and get
It's right by Burns Lake, like right on.
See the poor ladies, they've muted their microphones. so
Okay,
that's
I'm
why
right up to 63 on the volume and I don't hear them.
they- Okay, now
I'm going back down to 58 because that might be too high.
Are they talking?
How about we write it on with a marker?
Is
Put it on
anyone
the
of us
thing.
talking to us?
Yeah.
I was talking to Steven's talking to
Something?
on telephone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you.
Okay.
Speak up. Not hear
I wish I knew more things in carrier.
I love the way like all the kids know.
Yeah, their language programs are really strong. Yeah. I wish they had more of it in Prince George though, because Prince George is a huge carrier population, but like there's no reserve in Prince George, right? So
Halfway up.
Sorry?
The volume on the Polycom, I turned it up, it still didn't make any difference. And I did the remote for the TV. It didn't make any difference.
Okay, that probably means that one of them.
we
Take it off.
He's eating an orange.
Break time.
It's probably a counselor coming over to see what's up.
Yeah. What's going on? I hear
Yeah.
you ladies laughing.
Yeah. And then he's gonna be like, oh, is the camera on right now? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Steve.
I'm gonna get out for
All right, thank you.
Now you're paying attention.
Yeah.
But sexuality. These guys are you at BC?
Yeah.
Okay, but that video is still
Gee,
not
those
moving, eh?
kids aren't here.
It's cool. After 3 there.
We can't see any of you. We can only see the desk and the bottom portions of your
Yeah.
bodies.
Yeah. Shake it.
Take it.
Is this going?
Start singing.
Remember that one?
I don't know.
Apparently, I've been told that that's outdated.
Is she?
Can't use
Yeah,
that.
people don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
No. It's too old. Yeah. I wanted to, because I wanted to talk, I wanted to call my negotiating workshop. Let's talk about sex.
Okay.
And they said no.
Okay, they don't. When I was in grade 3, I used to have that album, like it was just
Oh,
now
that's
you're
pretty
like
good.
Hush Dance for the three.
Put the orange down.
Okay.
Healthy now.
My mission is too low.
No, I know, it's supposed to move like up on its own.
Moves by itself?
Have a seat.
The button on top of there.
Can you guys press your mute button?
Maybe we shouldn't.
There we go.
I like it.
Really. You can have it if you want.
Okay. What is
Do you
it?
want to mute ours for now?
Hello.
Like Babine?
Just tell them we're going to take your screen over and run a video, right? That's what
Hey.
they do when they're on video call.
We're here.
Hi. Hi. We're gonna run the video that we made this year that actually has one of your youth members in it, Wilf Plasme. Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is the video that we showed at the beginning of the learning circle, but we're just gonna show it again for you guys.
So don't have to worry about the camera.
So you don't have to worry about the camera. We're just going to take over your screen so you can watch the video. And then once the video's over, we'll put the camera back on. Is that cool? Are you guys ready for it?
Yes.
Go.
Okay.
In your hearing case, they can't hear it. Should be able to, but.
Where it goes.
Should we turn this off? It sounds like there's a video playing, but we can't see anything.
Sorry, I'm just getting Steven to put it on for you. Sorry. Bear with us here.
Okay. break.
One of my messages for all of our people if we're going to go home. Prior to 1492, we were very healthy people, strong in mind, body, and spirit. We didn't worry about each other as much in those days. We're so healthy, strong. Our young men would be running deer and moose down by foot. They'd be killing whales off canoes that they made with no metal. 60-foot canoes out of cedar trees. And they would carve them out without metal.
See the video.
They're beautiful. So we're going to go home to be
Yeah,
healthy
sorry,
again.
something's happened with the laptop
So
here
we'll
now.
go back
It's
to
not allowing
that
me to push
time.
content.
We live over 100. And be strong all the way through. We had strong mind, strong bodies.
Ah, yes, yes. And I know that's the reason why that's, see, nobody from Adobe here could listen to the video. I had to put it through here.
Pardon? What do we do?
Skipping the video.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just.
I used to have a thing about intimacy too with my friends. Like highlight friends.
Honey's not so bad for that. Like, I have some friends who like to like sit and watch and cuddle. And I'm like,
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I don't like.
yeah. I do, full up. I'm killing so far. You remember the Seinfeld episode? George and Jerry go to the theater and they sit beside each other, right directly beside each other. Jerry asks,
Okay, we're going to turn the floor back over to you, Jess, and Bambi. Just catch everybody up to speed on what we're going to do.
Hi, Lake Babine. How's it going? Is anyone there?
you just gotta unmute your things, I think.
It's okay probably if they unmute their things because they're the only participants. Yeah, you can just keep it unmuted because you're actually the only participants today. So we just kind of had a little bit of a technology fail there for showing you the videos. But we were hoping to show you a video of like when we had this spring, so it was in April, we had 24 youth from across BC that came to visit us in Vancouver, and we made 3 videos around like sexual health. We had one member from your nation, Wilf Plasway, who I believe does like youth programming in Burns Lake. So I was thinking actually...
Sorry, he's our youth cultural instructor now.
Okay, awesome. That's great to hear. That's so cool that you have that. So yeah, I was thinking maybe, because I know you were looking maybe to get some youth participants, maybe I can ask Wilf to start bringing some youth with him and we can start from there. Might be a good strategy.
Okay.
Okay.
How many?
Yeah.
How many are allowed?
As many as you want. Yeah. Sometimes we actually do prizes for the community that has the most youth. I think the most we had so far was 16 youth from one community, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so in our next learning circles, we'll probably start doing, like we'll ask a few questions at the end, and then the youth can have a chance to win prizes. And there's other ways that we can do youth engagement as well. Yeah, I think we're gonna reintroduce ourselves though, because we did that earlier. So maybe I'll let you go first.
Okay. I'm going to try out the one or maybe two carrier words I know. Hadi? Is that right? Is that how you say hello? Maybe? No response. Hi. I'm a Silsa. My name's Bambi. I'm Gitsan from Unspayak, so just up the way from you guys. And I come from the Wilson family, in case any of you know any of them. Bunch of rowdy kids. And I'm sort of like the auntie to the Aboriginal Youth Program, and I also am the Prevention Education Coordinator at AIDS Vancouver. I've come up a few times actually to Burns Lake to do some work. I've always loved it there. It's a nice community.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica. I'm from the Squamish Nation, or Squamish Nation, which is, the territory that we're sitting on right now. I was actually born up north, though. I was born in Wet'suwet'en territory in Smithers, and my mom used to work at the Friendship Center there, so yeah, and then came back down here to live with my family when I was younger. I'm the Aboriginal Youth Program manager at Vancouver YouthCO HIV and Hepatitis C Society, which is located in downtown Vancouver. So we do a bunch of different programming. We do like support for youth who are living with HIV or who are affected by HIV. So that could be like, positive family members or, friends and loved ones, because most of us know someone that's living with HIV, so it's pretty important stuff. And we also have an education program, so that's what the Aboriginal Youth Program is. It's like a culturally kind of safe and appropriate HIV education program for Aboriginal youth. We travel a little bit throughout the province, and sometimes, like I was saying for WILF before, sometimes we get funding and we can bring a bunch of people together and do some cool stuff. And then I also do the Learning Circle, I think once a month now this year. We did a bunch last year. So that's basically what we do. And we're thinking today we could do a little bit of an introduction on like things we can talk about like in the next Learning Circles. Because we are an HIV organization. Me and Bambi are just talking about how we're lucky as Aboriginal sexual health educators that we don't just have to talk about HIV or STIs and a lot of the crap that's piled onto us about when it comes to sexual health is a lot really negative a lot of the time. And we more come from like a sex positive point of view. And we do a more holistic wellness approach to our sexual health. So that's basically a little bit of an intro of what we do. So we tried to show you. Is it okay? Can we do like me and Bambi, not just my head? I feel awkward. Thank you. Yeah.
That was working for me though.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the Learning Circle is hoping to start up this year once a week, and it'd be really cool to have like Babine as part of that. So it'd be cool to have your feedback of like what would be a good time of the day for you guys, or what would be a good day of the week. We're super flexible here, so we can really do anything you need, so you need from us. And does anyone have any questions so far?
I have a suggestion for our Learning Circle. Target
Awesome.
the days that are Prody days.
Oh, that's a good idea. So Prody days. That's a good idea. Thank you for that. And like I said before, we usually do like prizes for any youth who come, so we have a little bit of an incentive here. Plus, sexual health is so fun.
I think we want a pizza party with UBC.
At UBC?
So
yeah, I think
one of the ideas that I'm having is that the youth have a youth center, and they've been requesting that they have some sleepovers. And I made it look like my hair was already halfway out, and told them there's no way I'm going to allow for the boys and the girls to be sleeping under the same roof in a building with doors that can close. So I told them that I will consider the fact that we'll do a session with the women and then a session with the boys, because the topics are easier to bring up when the other gender isn't around. And a lot of the girls shy off and act really cool when the guys are around, because they want to act like they know what they're talking about. Like, yeah, I know what it looks like, or yeah, I know what we're supposed to do with the thing. And so the girls act cool, but really they're clueless, and they are unaware of the risks. The risks really need to be highlighted for them. And I think if we break the sessions up by gender for the first 2 meetings with the youth, it'll make it a comfort zone for them to come together and be able to share what their concerns are. Or even like at the level that we are with engagement with these youth here, they're able to communicate to a comfortable level where they're willing to share personal issues. So I'd also like to request that if we're going to be doing this session, for the first few with LBN, that we keep it just UBC LBN geared, and then maybe if they become comfortable enough, we can open it up to other communities like we do usually with multiple communities, because I think the youth will be scared to share what issues they're going through, and if they hear what other communities are reacting to with situations that they're in, they're going to climb up, and they're not going to be willing to share any of that information with anyone. And we'll just be starting the cycle.
I have one question, because like it's my understanding that LBN, like in Burns, there's that's where you guys are located now, right?
Yes.
And so will you be opening that up to like some of the communities that are nearby that are still part of your nation, or do you want it just LBN and UBC?
Well, what I'm suggesting that is if we do the sessions, because sex and the areas around sex are really sensitive areas, and we do have 2 isolated communities that are able to communicate through the video conference. That's Fort Babine and Tatchet. We will be bringing them on board as well. And what I'm suggesting is that, like, when we're bringing our youth into these sessions, I want to be able to tell them that everything that you're saying right now is between you and UBC. You and UBC are building this relationship, and then maybe we'll step out of those boundaries and allow for them to communicate with other nations.
I think that's a really good suggestion. We were actually having a conversation before about like how we create safety for others to be able to talk about these things, and if that's a way that you think safety will be created for your youth, I would totally be into that. A lot of the sessions we do are both genders, but if you find that like people just aren't feeling comfortable to openly talk about these things with the other gender in the room, that's cool. I would also say that like maybe I could develop if we do like gender specific workshops, like one for males and one for females. I think it's important that they learn about each other as well. Like that's
that's something we're looking forward to. Like I was just merely suggesting that the first sessions be brought up with just the female and then with the male, and then bring them together and allow them to, because then they're comfortable with themselves, right? In order to be comfortable with others. I
think also something I could develop for you guys, if you're wanting to do something with just females or just males, I think that's sometimes a little bit problematic because a lot of people fall out of those boxes, you know, like if there's two-spirit people or people who have different sexual orientations or, you know, have like are transgendered or transsexual, like, you know, it's quite common. I would maybe even mention that, like, hey, we have 2 of these groups, different of these, you know, one female, one male. We do recognize that there's different gender expressions and different sexual orientations. I encourage you to like pick one that's, you know, fits you the best, and just so we keep it aware that we're being inclusive, and like letting kids know that we're not leaving them out on purpose, I think would be really important. But I think it would be cool if we, if you would be interested, if we did one with just females and just males, if you have a youth worker with them afterwards, we can create a discussion guide where you guys can talk more about these things as a community, and it's off camera. Does that sound interesting to you? Do you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do. Like I said, these youth are really closely engaged. This topic needs to be addressed. One of the concerns from the elders is that they need to be more aware of what they're doing. They need to be realizing the risks that come into play. They're asking them to have more self-respect. So we're trying to impress upon them the culture, the traditions, but we also want to give them the bare facts. Like,
do you have? I think we got the same question. Do you guys have condoms in your youth center bathrooms?
I'm refusing to dispense the condoms until we give them the session. We have boxes and boxes of them given to us, but I don't want to just be handing out condoms with expiration dates and saying use them before this date. So
well,
I'm really hoping. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just an expression. It's just you need to ensure that they're aware of the practices, like what's done.
Like one suggestion that I would make is if you leave the condoms out, and even if because they're youth, they're probably just going to want to play with them a little bit, which is completely fine. Like even when I was a youth worker, I didn't think that was a good use of the condoms, but really it just gets people comfortable with them, and if they're carrying them around, then they get used to having them with them, and hopefully will give them the tools to start having those discussions with their partners, like whoever they're choosing to share their bodies with or have sex with, just so that they get used to them and that it doesn't become like this big, huge thing when they receive them or when they have access to condoms.
I will say, like, the first stage of youth getting condoms is usually water balloons.
Yeah. Yeah. And although that might not be, like, the greatest use of them, but it's still really great to just to expose them to that in that sense so that they can get comfortable with them before they even sort of think about using them.
Yes, we do have them distributed to them in the community. The health center hands them out free as well, so they do have access to them, but just having them situated at the youth center was just a high-end topic because we really felt they needed to be involved in discussions like this first.
Yeah, it's really common. It's really common for people to have concerns that if you put out condoms, youth are going to suddenly want to have sex and use condoms. But I've actually been reading some studies lately that if youth have condoms and they have the knowledge, it actually pushes back the time of first sexual contact because I think they're a little bit more aware. And besides that, maybe you.
And if we're teaching young folks about condom use and about sex and about sexuality at younger ages, they actually take a lot longer before they start having their first sexual experiences, and they also will start using condoms right off the bat. Whereas on average, young folks who don't get those messages and are not taught anything about sex or sexuality, they'll actually have sex up to 3 times without even asking about condoms or about birth control or about like anything before they even start talking to anyone else about it. So the younger that we can sort of start to have those discussions and the more education we give them, the longer that they'll wait before they start having sex, and they'll actually be having protected sex rather than sort of, playing it loosey-goosey for a little while.
What's the youngest age target?
I was really lucky growing up. Like my personal experience of having sexual health education, they started with us in grade 6, and none of us grade 6ers were having sex. We weren't thinking about having sex for pretty much a few years after that. But like just the normalization of like the condoms, and like you're a grade 6 and a lot of people think you're a kid, but you're going through puberty, and like you yourself are pretty finicky about condoms in general, but just starting that normalization of like our sexual health and things we do to keep safe and healthy is really important.
In New Zealand, they start teaching young like kids about puberty and about like not necessarily about sex, but about puberty and body changes in grade 4. So before any of that happens, because usually young women will start to have their periods around grade 5 and 6. So if they were giving the information before the periods came, so then like there was less shame around their bodies changing into women's bodies. And then the boys in the class were taught that stuff too, so they actually were less likely to like bully or shame the girls for having their periods. And that was one thing that came out of New Zealand that was really big for me. So they already started having those conversations in grade 4, which seems really young. But really, if you have kids who are watching TV or reading stuff on the internet, or most, like, even at that age, kids already have a Facebook page. So they're already exposed to a lot of those messages. But once we start to give them healthy messages that are coming from our families and coming from our community, then those are the messages that'll stick with them for a lot longer than those, like, maybe unhealthy, overly sexualized images and messages that you get from TV and from the media. So if we start at a younger age, maybe grade 4, and then start having those small discussions, even if they're just 5 minutes. 5 minutes for that year. You start that small discussion, and those keep happening over time, then it becomes less scary for like the person giving the messages, and a heck of a lot less scary for the youth receiving the messages. And then it becomes easier when you start to have those conversations around like, this is what sex actually is. Because some people don't even know what that is. Like you were saying, like they don't know, they think that they know what a penis looks like and they think that they know what they're supposed to do with it. But in reality, they've only sort of seen maybe what that looks like on TV, but they don't really know what that looks like in real life. So it becomes easier to have those conversations. And then it also becomes that person realizes how much they respect their body because they know how it works and they know how the other person's body works, and they'll take those things into consideration before they start sharing their bodies with other people.
So what kind of things would you like to be included for like the boys group or the girls group? What kind of things are like do you think is important or concerns you have? What kind of things like pardon?
I guess, sorry, I don't like how it cuts out. But anyway, I think making them comfortable with themselves, making them become comfortable with their anatomy. And then, like you said, there are issues within each of the genders that we may be bumping into. You mentioned twin spirits or two spirits, sorry, and talking about transgender and all those kind of things, but making the individual comfortable with themselves in each of the genders, in each of the groups, that's important.
Yeah.
And once they become familiar with themselves, then bringing up, like, do the banana project.
What's the banana project?
On screen. Maybe we'll prepare it, like you get the bananas and the condoms on screen. We'll have them on the tables here in front of them. Exactly. Yeah. Did you just pull that out of your back pocket?
I'm a sexual health educator, so I always have a few things in my backpack. One of them is unlubed condoms. So, we can do demonstrations.
Yes. So it would be nice if we could set up a session where you have your tools in front of you, we provide them with the tools in front of them, and do an on-screen guidance with them so that it feels like they're interacting. And we're not put in an uncomfortable stage to like be instructing them or showing them. Like we'll be following along. I'll pretend I don't know what I'm doing with the banana and copy.
No, that's a great idea. I think the funny thing about when we come into other communities is how welcome we are and how we can create safety just by being from the outside, weirdly enough, because we come in, we can teach things, people can talk about whatever they want, and then we're going to leave with that information, right? So like people have a little bit more safety with that.
Yeah, And the other thing I was going to ask is for the first few sessions, like you talked about with like having the two groups separated, is do you have a male and a female elder that might come and talk about some rites of passage?
Oh,
Yes, we do.
Because that would be fantastic to have them come and be a part of these groups too. And then it would be a really great safe space to be able to share some of that knowledge and some of those, pass on some of those traditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be cool if we could continue, if we could do a workshop and then you could continue the conversation afterwards, like whether you want like me to help. I know I said I could help before, like make a discussion guide, or even if you just want to do that yourself, if you're like you have no idea what we want to talk about. Yeah, so I'm here to help with whatever you might need for that.
Hello, Jessica. How are you doing today?
Hi.
It's Will.
Who is that? Oh, is it? I can't see you. The camera's not on you. How are you doing?
Good. How about you?
Over the whole thing.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. I didn't even mention about this, but Emma Palmetier gave me this message about that you guys were going to be starting to go online to register, and I didn't even get the message until this morning. And but I came here just to see Crystal and them, but I found out that she was speaking to you guys, and there I'm really happy and surprised to see you on screen, but not in person though. But it's good to see you again.
I know you need to come by and say hi if you're ever in the city.
I will be going back down there soon, probably like around February, because I'm going to try to book a vacation down there so I could probably see all of you, including my friends from the Vancouver 2010 too.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind, I was just sorry, I feel a little bit distracted. So the thing I get from you guys about what you want us to teach each of like male and females is like something about like kind of starting to get a little bit used to our bodies and like the ways that they work and like really normalizing that, whether it be for females or males. And then talking a little bit about like different genders and sexual orientations. So kind of like opening it really up so that people can start to have these conversations. What do you feel about like, even if we do females and they're safe in their female group, but what if we talk about male bodies as well? When we can do that in the safety, and then when we're with males, we can also talk about female bodies. Because I feel like with you know, a lot of in our cultures before contact, we had a lot of respect for other people's bodies, and like with kind of like this Western culture that we're living in, like I feel like there's a lot of disrespect sometimes for other people, respecting other people's bodies and like whatever other people's bodies do, and like starting to kind of normalize that as well. How do you feel about that?
That's what we're requesting. We're only asking for an initial session with the males and then the females, and then bring them together. Like it's good that you're mentioning that you mentioned the other gender in each of the sessions, but bring them together in the end. It's just the central focus. Like we really want to.
One question that I had for when the groups do come together, or when they're still separated and we're talking about anatomy, which it sounds like what you want to talk about is like just being able to be comfortable calling your vagina a vagina or penis a penis and knowing how they work, is how comfortable are you with if we were to also talk about pleasurable sex and about masturbation as normal parts of sexuality? Yeah?
Yeah, well, I guess it has to be familiarized, right? If you don't educate them on it, then they're gonna feel disconnected, or they're gonna be feeling like outsiders, because it's like, even just saying vagina, in our culture we have words for those, and it's like taboo. You say it and it's like saying a swear word, so they need to be able to become open and familiar with those words. And
our the Gitsan word for vagina is min, and so we think it's so funny because you can see it everywhere, like min heat and like min wax. We think it's hilarious, especially the min wax commercials, and they're like.
Jessica.
Even I know the get sound word for vagina
Yeah.
by being Bambi's friend.
Jessica, I was just wondering,
Yeah?
do you remember what I have taught you of our traditional way of saying penis and vagina? Do you remember that?
I remember you told
You're on
me.
the spot.
Shit. You know what? You should remind me. What's the traditional way to say penis and vagina?
For women,
I know.
for women's vagina, it would be do.
Doch.
Like it's in Homer, like way Homer says it, like do.
Dough.
It's do.
Oh, I remember, yeah. Remember? Dough.
Do you want
Dough.
that sounds familiar to a get sound word for you can't hear?
Oh.
Yeah.
And for
what's the
man's
one
penis, it's qual.
Gual?
Well,
Yes.
Gual?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Dough. Gual.
have you guys ever heard of the 1491s?
No.
No? You should YouTube them. They're amazing. But one of the guys from there, he tweeted how to say boobs, vagina, penis, and bum on Twitter in his own language. And then I tweeted how to say them all in Gitsanawak. And it started this big trend where all these other people were like tweeting how to say their bits in traditional language. It's pretty cool.
Yes.
I saved all of them, so I know how to say it.
Nice. Yeah, so as Wilf has pointed out, I usually ask people if they know how to say their like body parts in like their languages, because like with colonization and with the church, those were things that we lost, and like they're just body parts, right? And there are things now that like for a lot of us it's a taboo word or a dirty word, right? So I usually ask people like what if they know the traditional names for their like penises and vaginas. Yeah, so it's part of my Aboriginal sexual health work. My personal social activism. Yeah, so that sounds really
You keep digging around, Jessica. You keep digging around and reaching back. Like, what is she gonna
sorry,
pull
no.
up next?
I'm just putting my shoes on because my shoes are off. I'm just that comfortable.
Pull out the condoms.
Yeah.
Something else to get out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I have lots of interesting things here.
Going over the list of things that you had, the topics.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just go over the list of the topics I was thinking about talking about this year. So one of them I'll definitely talk about at some point is HIV. So we'll talk about we'll talk about testing, we'll talk about how it's passed from one person to another. We'll also talk about how to protect that and like where we can get tested. And I know for a lot of people up north, like getting tested itself is a very sensitive topic because a lot of the time up north there's just one little health station and usually your aunt works at it. So so we'll talk a little bit about how to maintain confidentiality in small towns. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
It's like, it's like a possessed camera. Okay. So we'll definitely talk about HIV, and we'll probably do a little bit on hepatitis C as well. So hepatitis C is another virus that causes pretty intense health conditions as well that can be passed through a bunch of different means that we'll talk about. We'll also talk about gender expression and two-spirited and what that means to different people. We'll try to find some resources on that as well. So we'll talk a little bit about our bodies and what they do and how they change during puberty and what that means to us emotionally, what are the changes in our brains and minds that are happening then as well, not just our bodies. Did you want to add anything to that right now?
No.
You're okay? So we'll also talk about other STIs besides HIV that can be passed and how to prevent them and which ones are curable and how we do that as well. we'll also talk about like contraception and like different forms of contraception, because those of us who have status cards, like most of these contraceptions are free, so we can get them free from a doctor, which is pretty cool. There's probably about 5 main ones that are more popular with our generation, which we'll talk about. And we'll also talk about like barrier methods of contraception, which prevent STIs as well as unplanned pregnancies. So we want to make sure that we're teaching our youth that even if we're on like the pill or something, it's still really important to use barrier methods of protection, because those help prevent things like HIV and other STIs. We'll talk a little bit about sexual orientation. So like, and sometimes that can mean two-spiritedness, sometimes that doesn't mean two-spiritedness, and like how we can like open up these conversations to create more safety for like our friends and family and ourselves with different sexual orientations, you know, because like we find that a lot of people have a lot of fluidity in their sexuality, and we need to create safe spaces for those people. So that can, you know, be anything. Yes, we'll talk about different sexual expressions. And yeah, we also have a Facebook page. I'm not sure if Wilf mentioned that or if Wilf has joined it yet, but it's Aboriginal Youth Program on Facebook.
I'm on that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we post like really easy to follow information. I'm not sure, does Lake Babine, like, does your band have a Facebook page?
Yes, we do.
Yeah? So like if you want to join our Facebook page, we do like really youth-friendly like sexual health resources, like whether it's like a short video or just like a picture. It doesn't have any not sexually suggestive pictures, just like you know, about different issues and stuff. And then you could, if you want, you could share that on your Lake Babine site as well for your youth. Yeah. Anything you want to add? No. So Bambi, like I'll be doing workshops this year, and Bambi will be doing some workshops as well. So feel free to, like, you know, send us in any suggestions, like whether that be, like, you can email me personally. It's jessica.s@youthco.org. Like if you have any information about like resources, or if I have any resources I can send you, or where you can get resources, or like, you know, any information you want to share with your youth, you can always just like email me. That's kind of my job and my passion. I'm really happy to help. Yeah.
Can I say a few things right in here? Hi there, my name is Crystal Morris. I'm the Aboriginal Education Coordinator for the School of Population and Public Health here at UBC. I just asked Jessica if I could jump in a moment here when we're talking about some of the program planning and the needs of communities. So in addition to the work that Jessica and Bambi are doing, we're actually working on some of the other areas, the physical side, a sports and actions program. I don't specifically remember the titles, but Dr. Rosalind Hanna bringing some of the educational pieces in for the physical health. And then in addition to that is the role models. And currently we have, we're setting the date and finalizing that, is an SFU, Simon Fraser University student who actually comes from the north and relocated to Vancouver at the age of 14. So sharing her story and her success, she is currently 24 years old, double major in criminology, but from where she started when she was 14, the many challenges and that she faced and barriers she faced throughout her life. She is now currently the Canadian badminton coach for the Canadian national team. In addition to being a full-time student, she gives back to the community, does multiple hours, and highlighting those types of youth who have faced the barriers and challenges, because she talks about coming from a remote community and the social challenges with her family, experiencing the drugs and the alcohol personally, and how she overcame those barriers, relocating to Vancouver, being in and out of foster homes, in addition to having to then go on independent living in the provincial system, and it didn't work, so then going to independent living and holding down 3 jobs and going to high school full-time to, her success story around that and her challenges. In addition to a national champion wrestler from Simon Fraser as well, who is the Canadian champion. I believe he's currently. And in addition to that, their health challenges and barriers as First Nations people, because she's 24 years old, turning 25 in a couple weeks, and she talks about her barriers, even though she said, I finished my double major. My problem now is I'm female, I'm Aboriginal, I'm very young. And she said she can speak very well over the phone, and that as soon as somebody sees her in person, because as First Nations people, a lot of times we don't look our age, and she does look very young. So she said that's a barrier. And speaking to that, in addition to, we have, what is it? Is it the Ice Games? There's a young man who comes from Williams Lake, Trevor Mack. He's in the video production. He has won the Gathering Wisdom Youth Video Producing Prize 2 years in a row. So he was first 2 years ago, second this past Gathering Wisdom. So he would like to share his story with other youth, because of course he's from Williams Lake and the challenges of moving to a city, making the decision to come to the city, at the same time pursuing his career. What was that called again? Ice Games, or the new craze that
Hunger Games?
No, he's an ice skater, a speed skater, and
She goes over jumps.
he goes over
shit?
jumps, and anyhow, it actually took off last year, and it became a real big craze where they're on men's hockey skates and they're jumping over, skating around. So anyhow, he's a Canadian national champ.
Wow.
So, and he wants to share his story of his success and his challenges, and balancing all of that with school. And he's only 20. So, and what we're looking at as well is what's been trending with some of the universities and locally here at the Friendship Center is eating disorders for our girls. So we talk gender specific. We're noticing a trend emerging again where eating disorders has come to the forefront, and people have requested that we do a gender specific on eating disorders. And again, it's a matter of finding out and looking for the resources. If you have any resources out there that we can share, and that's the other piece of the UBC Learning Circle and the Youth Circle, is sharing resources with you that we find, and hopefully, if you find a resource or have a facilitator in mind, that you give us that resource, because we do have, again, another post-secondary student who is in recovery from an eating disorder. So we have the shared story, but we want the clinical piece now of somebody who has that background. In addition to what's been emerging, of course, with the death of
Amanda Todd?
Yes, the bullying. So that's another area that we would definitely like to address sooner than later. So those are some of the short term that we're looking at for the Youth Circle, in addition to doing some future planning. And of course, the suicide, we're looking at Vancouver Island right now, and both for the youth and the Learning Circle, because Will Morris from the island just arrived home a couple days ago from the national conference over in Ontario with respect to their model on Vancouver Island and how they've addressed each of the different levels of youth, elders, and the general community, and how they were brought together to address the suicide intervention and prevention. So I guess those are some of the areas that we're looking at when it comes to the Youth Circle. and we're always welcoming new ideas and facilitators and any other comments that you may have with respect to these areas that we're looking at currently.
Yeah, and if we want to, if Lake Babine wants that workshop, I think it'd be really fun, and maybe the three of us, or like whoever wants to kind of be our go-to person at Lake Babine can start to have a conversation about, maybe I can develop an agenda and you can take a look at it and add a few things or tell me how that kind of fits for what you're looking for.
Okay. One of the issues that we have in our community, well, with amongst the youth are, I don't know if they call it knifing or slashing. I don't know what the correct
Cutting. Yeah.
Cutting, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an issue that's being brought forth, and it's been done repeatedly. And it's one that they hide very well. Yeah. It's one that is a very hard topic to tackle. So maybe when we're building on these relationships with these youth, in one of those sessions that can be brought up. Like, it would be nice to see some resources that are available and some people sharing experiences of what they've gone through.
I like the idea of these other resources.
I think we need to head out.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, and definitely I will look and talk to people that I know that have experienced the cutting, because you bring up something that is a difficult subject to probably approach. And I do know some people that are very close to me that are youth that have actually gone through those stages and are in the recovery side of it, but also at the same time, again, looking for the professional side to co-facilitate with them. So I have that on my list to find. And I guess what we're doing here is we need to wrap things up, and I just want to say thank you. If we could have a contact person. I guess I do have one question. Who's the fella sitting there?
That's Wilf.
Wilf?
Yes.
You said you only received the email this morning from somebody else. That's the other thing we're trying to do, is expand our connection and ensure we're targeting the people, and the people who need to receive these messages are receiving them in a more timely fashion. So if I can just let you know, give you my email, it's crystal.morris@ubc.ca, and then we'll ensure that you're put on our direct mail out list for both the Learning Circle and the Youth Circle. That way you're hearing it sooner than the day of our presentation. And we are, in addition to that, expanding out to, I've contacted all the school districts and with the intention of getting to the First Nations support workers. In addition to trying to encompass the youth workers and communities, because there is not one base of connections and emails that I can go to that has all those contacts. So we're building on our list as well. And the list that I do have is currently the health directors and what previously existed for the Learning Circle and the Youth Circle. So if you'd like to be put on our direct mail out list, just send us an email and I will ensure that that happens. In addition to, in Carrier-Secani Child and Family Services, Susan Armstrong has just assured me she will ensure, if you're a part of the Carrier-Secani Child and Family Services, that she will ensure that anybody, all staff, are aware of what's happening here as well. So if we begin duplicating emails, I apologize. So if is there any more comments or suggestions from your end as we bring to a close our Learning Circle? And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much, and I see there's a number of staff there for participating in today's session.
Because I said it wrong.
And how many are in your room right now?
8.
8. Okay.
Ron, I'm thinking Creed.
Thank you. Is there any more comments for you, for myself, Bambi, or Jess?
Can I just ask Jessica to wave her toy to our health director?
I'm looking at you.
Thank you.
Demonstrator. It's a demonstrator.
Thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Though I'm looking forward to tackling this project with you. We do take these issues very seriously, and we do have a huge participation with the youth. I think we have to reevaluate the times that we do these sessions. I'm thinking because of the winter hours and because of the amount of activities that the youth have, we're gonna have to reevaluate the times of the sessions. So we'll be contacting you through email and sending you some information, and then I have a couple of ideas that we can implement in the next meeting.
That would be great, because that's what we were talking about before you came online. What is the best time? We went with the historical time, and if that doesn't work, then yes, we do need to adjust our timing. I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you on Facebook, Jessica.
Bye. That's awesome.